Oh, what do you mean?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh yeah, I think I met like one of the organizers like
So you've had Chinese clients, there's like really companies
So in China, a resource like Baidu. So Baidu sells to Chinese clients, and then we offer Chinese CDN services to our clients.
Okay.
But it's a process. Like getting access to CDN in China is a process. So it has to go through their government. And they have to, it has to be like, if you don't do that.
So it's like a supply side proxy.
That's an interesting way to put it. Like, you could call it a reverse process. But the general idea is if you go to your website, right, instead of going directly to your server, it might be like a single WordPress share post. It's going to go to one site. The vast majority of the time, we know it's cache. Our education serves incredibly quickly. Your website gets thousands of steps. It's a little website gets 10,000 steps. In addition, if someone tries to interrupt your by attacking you, we have so much work that we can handle that attack no matter your server. So we get massive amounts of search all the time. We have people in secure rooms in San Francisco and London and Singapore whose sole job is to do that kind of stuff, and that gives you a lot more power. You can get that for
realize the security apparatus themselves.
But even including the scams, enterprise companies, it's impossible to enforce. You're never going to have a very good company.
This is only one of the several things.
I will get White House.
Do you on LinkedIn and then you'll see the other things. And I'm also small. So if you have a small business and you need mentors, free financing, that is you get paid back for no interest. All of this is provided by the small business administration. Why do I do this? 66 impact. I do what I know what I do.
Are you in school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I talked to a number of folks when I was
They are strict. It's like a military organization. They have to do all this information update, all this stuff. And no, I cannot profit from anything. I cannot make any money, even from they do mentoring outside of school. And they say, well, you can't even from that extension because it will reflect on the. And I don't actually, so it doesn't matter.
great advice. When I was in college, great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Here's the first argument. SBA sponsored. I took a.
Plus, I do junior achievement.
Oh yeah.
So I take young people and we help them build companies, all the way from startup all the way to liquidation. And they actually make a profit, they make a product, they put a service together, they actually do the whole thing. I'm sorry?
Why is it liquidation?
Oh, because it's sponsored by Jerry. When they liquidate, every company we built upon liquidation was bought by another person or company. So then at that point in time, all the shareholders, which are the students, get paid. And every one of them made a profit. And we didn't tell you.
We didn't make a party when I did New York City, but I was out in South California.
Oh, really? Good. I can believe in. Oh, no, but see, it's only because JA has to remove itself from it. We insure everything. So we have to load it in and give it to the students, and they decide what they want to do with it. And in every case, they liquidate it by selling it to an actual entrepreneur.
But in theory, when you sell it, it's right.
Right, that's why I'm saying.
Some of the cases, I'll give you an example. This young group of kids developed this, you know, the Uber sharing thing?
Yeah.
They have discovered a need for people who need a drone, and they have a network of people who have drones. And so they put together an Uber app that matches people who need a drone for just a day, an afternoon, to people who are. That company is actually now being funded by their agent. Really, and the three kids who started are still the CEO. Yeah, and they're like 15. You know, they're on their way. They hired a mentor. The school had to hire a psychologist or someone to make sure they're doing very good. So there's a lot for them to do as a starter at such a young age.
Yes. My name is Jesse. I could have been to something like that. Right now I work at a great company.
It's a very Shanghai.
For that last before that I was at that's definitely possible. I've been around here almost about 10 years.
So I sold my house in San Francisco. I talked to Twin Peaks. Like I was facing the ocean side. Deal.
Yeah.
And I moved to Austin and bought 3 homes. 2 I rent, 1 I live in. And then, in terms of amenities, my brother who still lives in San Francisco was on the phone yelling at me. You'll never be able to move back. And you're sitting on a gold mine. You gotta wait until it really. And I said, no. And I have a daughter, 15, and my wife. A lot of reasons.
Yeah. 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 But then,
University Avenue School. And I can feel nice to meet you here. That's pretty good. She's 15.
You know, and you have to make like all the hard decisions that you'd like to make every week.
People ask me, what's the difference between
Once you've actually built it,
San Francisco, Austin, and your daughter?
yeah.
And I said, this is my daughter. I live in Austin.
Yeah.
That's in our function flaws. Because the bills leave the farm too close to the creek.
And see how
And during the rainy season, like now, even though it didn't rain, the creek water was running. For a while, the farms are too young to understand their so she goes looking at the weather. She's gonna run out and I'll tell you everything she does. And she picks it up and then she runs to upper,
Wait, project.
usually under a bush. And it does refine the farms. She's rain.
I fight with John 5.
So, and this is something experience.
Yeah.
She was born in San Francisco, but that's an experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't live in the country. This is in the city. Seeing how.
Yeah.
So when I'm in China, I do work with children. So this is a group of children. So I spent my Saturday.
Yeah. Yep. Never.
What they want to do is they want to speak English to me. So they show me their town. So they show me all over the town in specific parts of the town. And this kid, the kid that was smart, he was from Joe. He was so good at English, he could use double technique. So that's kind of is China better every year? He says, oh, it's gotta be better every year, better every year. He says, well, you live in a totalitarian government. I can't even know what that means. Yeah, China is a one-party system. America, two-party system. So China only half as bad. Like, is he joking with me? Is he like, he must have been like, I don't know, 10, 11? Only half as bad. And like, this was my birthday dinner. My connection is my current gym. I asked the person in the neighborhood, fish anything. Always had a good time. There's in Beijing. I'm in Beijing. It's called Slow Boat Brewery. And they have Zombie Pirate 86. And the first number one. Yeah, last year. I don't know, they probably have a big brewery. And then replicate the largest strong. Yeah, it's called Slow Boat. Years ago. They said we're going to put them on ready. What do you do for
Yeah, and like the guy who gave it, like, he really looked like this big agitator, right? Like, when am I going to get my word back?
so creative. Always thinking, it's in their DNA. Even sales. When I was in sales, technology sales, also a lot of relationship.
Hey everyone, yeah, you can hear me. You have 15 seconds to finish your conversations, politely, say hi. I'll drink out of my novelty mug that hopefully many of you could go home today with, not that literal mug I just drank out of it, but one that's very similar to it. My question is, can you hear me without this microphone? Can you hear me without this microphone?
You're kind of both in your phones and out of it.
Yes, because there's an overhead microphone. Does this sound reasonable? Yes. Okay, perfect. They told me I would need this microphone to get your attention, and then once I had it, I was good. But I'm kind of like standing very far away, as if there's like a riot barricade between us or something.
You have our attention.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't know what that was. Oh, thank you. So I am here, can you still hear me? Yeah. I'm here to talk about Cloudflare Apps. How many of you know what Cloudflare is, or have ever heard of Cloudflare? Okay, it looks like most of you. I'll explain just to remind everyone. Cloudflare is a company that sits between websites and the internet. Specifically, we sit between 6 million websites on the internet. And we do 7 million websites on the internet. It's changing so fast I can't even keep up to date. And we deal with something like 14% of all the traffic on the internet. And what we do for these websites is we make them faster and we make them more secure. But what's relevant to you as developers is we through those edge locations that we have all around the world and all of those sites that we have, we create this tremendous opportunity for other people to build things on our network. And for those things to be really powerful and really interesting and have a huge contribution to what people are able to do with their websites, and to allow you to make money selling those things potentially. So Cloudflare Apps is a way of building things that will run on the Cloudflare network. So those 6 million sites can try them, install them, use them, enjoy them, and potentially buy them. And what we're going to talk about today is how you can build those apps. And I'm going to do kind of a basic introduction. I'm going to build an app right here. It could go horribly wrong. So there's an element of drama, which is great. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what apps are. The kind of logistics behind this is really cool because the App Store has not been launched yet. It's getting launched in June. So you're at this moment right now when you could theoretically learn about apps in this talk and learn things that are not available anywhere else before it actually gets launched, and be an app that's available on the store when it launches or immediately after it launches, before anyone else who is not in this room right now.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of clients who are concerned about the loss of net neutrality. Would Cloudflare be a hedge for them to say, I don't have to worry about what the ISPs are going to do. I'm going to do it this way.
So that was a very interesting question. The question is Cloudflare a tool, a hedge against a loss of net neutrality? And I think the answer is unequivocally yes, because Cloudflare is a company that is completely committed to free speech to the point where you can host almost anything on Cloudflare with certain exceptions. So we don't make personal decisions about what can and can't be hosted for the most part. So we're very neutral, right? And at the same time, we allow you to not get locked into using a single other vendor, to not get locked into building your entire stack on any one company. And so if you use Cloudflare, it's giving you this fundamental amount of control, where if something goes wrong, you have the ability to reroute your website somewhere else. And you also have the ability to have security, to have SSL, through the entire flow of your website, from your user all the way through our network and to your server. So it makes it very hard for people to manipulate your traffic in any way. I think it is, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So what you're looking at here is the Cloudflare App Store as it exists on my computer. None of you can see this yet because the ability to install apps is something that isn't public yet, as I said. And so it's very exciting. Also, several things may be broken. They will be fixed, one would hope. And so to sort of give a more understandable, palpable example of what installing an app is and what an app is, we're going to look at the PayPal app. Let's say I have a website, and that website uses Cloudflare, or could use Cloudflare, because any website can use Cloudflare. And I want to install a way of selling something on my website. I have an album or a service, or I want to collect donations on my website. Right now, if you want to do this, you have to be pretty technical. You have to be able to copy-paste JavaScript to the right spot in your website, which is something that winnows out 99% of the people that have websites. And so the question that we are fundamentally trying to answer is, how can we make it so the other 99%, all of the non-technical people, can use the same tools as the technical people in this room? And so let's try to install a PayPal button on my website and see how that goes. I mean, it will go well. So what you're looking at here on the left is the options for this app. And so I'm going to put my email in. Feel free to email me at any time. And on the right, you're seeing my website. And this is a live preview of my website with this app installed on it. And I can do a bunch of really interesting things. I can pick a location on the site. And this is something to pay attention to because these are the tools that you're going to have when you're building your own apps. So for example, you can collect a location from the user and use that to place your app at a certain spot on the user's page. I can also enter all sorts of options. So let's say I want to sell app consulting, which is not something anyone should pay me for. But I will charge $1. So I'm now getting this live preview of what this app looks like on my site. And if I like how it looks, I can install it. And then the app appears on my website. So that is what a Cloudflare app is. That's what you're enabling people to do, to take the things that you build and use them without knowing what JavaScript is. And purchase them. Because if you wanted to sell this ability to insert PayPal into your site, first of all, you should probably talk to PayPal. But second, you could sell this for $1 a month or $5 a month. Or any, all the ways that people sell things on the iPhone App Store, you can sell on the Cloudflare App Store. And one of the really great components of this is your phone rarely makes you any money, but your website often does. So people are theoretically willing to pay much more money to install something onto their site than they would be to install something onto their phone. So you have this huge opportunity. So let's build an app. Does everyone understand how apps work and the general idea? Does anyone have any questions right now? Yeah.
I do. So I'm wondering, excuse me, how are you, like, for example, let's just say I have a very simple vanilla HTML JavaScript website, nothing fancy. Are you using IDs or div tags? Like, how are we injecting that into this specific piece of, into this specific DOM element?
That is such a good question. That's a great question. So the question was, how are we actually figuring out where on the page to place this? And there are different levels of answer that I can give. The simple answer is we're using this selector. So when you pick a location on the page, we're grabbing that selector and remembering it. The real answer is we do a multi-step process where when the page initially loads, we figure out where things are, then we place apps, and that way, when you pick a location here, other apps don't mess with this app. Does that make sense? So for example, right now I just placed this app at the top of this page. So without the ability to do this, if I picked another location here, it would be wrong. Because it wouldn't be the third child, it would be the second child. And so we have to do some magic around keeping track of the original location, making sure we know where that was so that apps can always end up in the spot that they expected to end up in. But the general idea is we're using CSS selectors. Yeah. Okay, any other questions about apps? Does anyone think apps are like super lame? And what's the point? No? Okay. Or they don't have the courage to tell me, which is also fine. I don't need to know. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to build an app. And this is the part that could get really dicey. But what I'm doing right now is I've opened the app creator, which is a tool that you can reach at cloudflare.com/apps. And I'm pointing it to a directory on my computer where I've placed, I'm going to show you exactly what I've placed in there. I've placed a file called install.json, which you see on the right, which is this very basic JSON file that says what resources we're installing and what options we want to collect. And then on the left, I have my app.js, which is totally empty right now. But I'm going to put a console.log in there just so that we know that this is actually working. And so in the head of this file, and can everyone read this? It looks really small. How about that? Can people read it? A little bit bigger. Can people read it? A little bit bigger. We're getting to the point where this is really going to wrap.
He's pressing in the back. Are you gonna? Can you read it?
There's a TV here.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for telling me. Okay, so in the head of this page, we're going to load this app.js file, which is the file I have on the left. So it's the world's simplest app, and we're going to see if it works. And so I'm going to point my app creator at this folder. And I'm going to open my console, which is going to be really small. And we are going to see test get logged here, right? So we now have an app that's doing something on this page. So the next thing that I'm going to do. No, that's from the file uploading process. Sorry. Did I mention that this is a as yet unreleased product? If everything on the screen goes the way it's supposed to go, we're doing really well. So the next thing that I want to do here is build an actual app. And so let's try to do something that does something interesting to the page. So for example, maybe we make a style change. Did I make any horrible mistakes? Does everyone know what this is doing? This is creating a new style element and then giving it some CSS that should hopefully make the background color of the page red and then adding it to the head of the page. So if this works, when we load this page, it should be red. Wow, that's actually so helpful. Thank you. So now let's try to make some changes here. What if we want to, for example, collect a color from the user? So we want to collect an input. The user can choose the color of the background of their page. And so we're going to make a color property. And then over here, we're going to use that property. Install options dot color. And I'm just going to wrap that text so that you can see it. So does this make sense? We're collecting a color from the user, and then we're using that color in our JavaScript. And so let's see if this works. And now the page should reload with the color of our choice. So the next thing that I'm going to do, if people are still interested and intrigued, is make it so that we can pick a certain location on the page to make that color. Because you may not want the background of the entire page. Maybe you just want a certain part of the page. And if this seems really boring and obvious, that means we did a good job. Interesting is bad in this world. Okay, so I'm sorry about the word wrapping, but can everyone tell what this is kind of doing? It's collecting some location from the user, and then it's using that location in our CSS to decide where to apply this rule to. Does that make sense to everyone? And so what are who thinks this is going to work on the first try? Raise your hand. That's incredibly few people. Smart. So let's try just making that yellow. Never bet against the house. And so the next thing I want to do, and I know I'm moving super fast, does anyone have any questions about how this works? Yeah.
This might be a bit of a question, but I'm just making a stupid toy and making a small web page and I'm flying divs around the page and changing the location of divs on a button click.
Mm-hmm.
Show a portfolio or something. Pop a div over here. So if you're doing a selector to find out where the things on the page according to divs, if someone's doing some sort of responsive design and changes divs around or puts divs in different places, how does it know where to put it?
That's a good question. So the question was, if you're doing responsive design, which is another way of saying websites that change in response usually to the size of the page, but it could be other things. So maybe you have a website that you want to look really good on mobile, but you also want it to look really good on desktop. So you have a little bit different CSS in the two situations. How can this selecting concept work? And the answer is responsive design generally only changes the CSS. It doesn't change the DOM structure. It doesn't change the HTML structure of the page. So if we're saying the third child of a specific thing, then it doesn't change generally when you use responsive design. It can change if you're using JavaScript to move things around, but ideally we've already marked that node when the page loaded, and so we know where it is even as we move it. If that fails, then we have ways of detecting that so that we can alert the person who installed the app that maybe something's wrong and they need to take a look at it. Yeah.
So on the same note, like for content that's dynamically generated on the client, or like for an SAP, would, while people are picking where things should go, like they would have to be in the correct state at the time, right? Because that DOM element would have to basically, am I right?
Correct. So the question was, in order for a user to pick a certain location on the page, do they have to be in a certain state? So for example, if you have a page that's doing client-side re-rendering or something like that, how do you know that it's in the right state? And the answer, there's a couple answers. One is, if it can't find the node, then you can not render, which is what we usually recommend doing. Another is, what the installing user can control when the app gets installed. So they can only install it on certain pages of their site. So if they only want it on this particular page or in this particular client-side routing state, then they can do that. And that usually solves those issues. If you run into a situation where you're doing like, then I'm very interested in talking to you about that particular situation and how we can solve it. Any other questions? Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is, it's kind of annoying to me that whenever I make a change over here, this whole preview has to reload. Particularly if this website was super slow, it could be really annoying. And fortunately, most of the time, we don't actually need the whole page to reload in order to update, in this case, the color of the background of this. So I'm going to go over to our developer documentation in the preview section, and I'm going to grab an example of how we can tell the preview how to update this preview using JavaScript instead of needing to reload the whole page. And so I'm going to paste that in, as all great developers do. I'm going to try to avoid actually reading it if possible. But what it's doing is it's saying, when any option changes, which is the asterisk, instead of reloading, I want you to run this JavaScript. And so over here, if I define a function called install scope.set options, I'm just going to log that for a second. Whenever an option is changed, it should run my function. So I won't take any bets because I know whose side you're on. And so if we look at this object, it's the two options that we had, the location and the color. So now we can make this, now that we know how it's going to tell us that updates are happening, we can make it actually update. So I'll default the options to the install options we get when the page loads. And then when this fires, I'll update those options. And I'm going to make this function up here, this code that updates the style, I'm going to make it a function too. And I know that the tabbing with the word wrapping is really hard to read. Okay, so going over this, we make our style node no matter what at the beginning. And then we have this new render function that actually updates the style with the options that we have. And then we call that render function when the page loads, but we also call it whenever the options are changed. So let's see, this is getting increasingly complex, and the odds that it works is getting lower and lower, but it does. So does everyone kind of get the idea of how you could build an app? Does anyone have any questions about that or about anything we just looked at? Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking so many questions.
So I have questions around performance. So for throttled network connections, right? This new UX movement to kind of show app shells or skeleton content, right? And so if the majority of the site's content is relying on these CDNs to be loaded on the page, which like is a whole other, right? So how can sites take advantage of server-side rendering or like all the other kind of progressive movements around rendering HTML content and then kind of progressively filling it in?
So the kind of global question was, how can sites be performant if they're using apps? How can they do pre-rendering? How can they do server-side rendering? How can they really care about when assets get loaded? The one big answer to this is we don't actually build one bundle of JavaScript that gets installed. We build at least two. One that goes in the head, which means this has to load synchronously when the page loads, and another that loads in the body, which means this loads asynchronously. And so when you're building an app, you get to say, these are the assets that the page must have when it renders, because maybe we're changing how the page looks and it really matters. These are the assets like an analytics tracking code that it's okay if it loads later. And so the app creator is defining that. The second reason that we don't cause a horrible performance bottleneck is because, fortunately, we also are a CDN. So the asset that you're loading here is getting loaded from the same domain as the original website. And it's getting loaded over the same TCP connection usually. And in an ideal world, it's getting loaded over HTTP2. So it's getting loaded over actually the same socket simultaneously. when the original page is loading. So we are doing, I think, as much as is possible to make the loading of assets like this as quick as is possible, and allowing people to define what does need to be loaded and what doesn't.
But like the injection in the head, like I'm assuming that would be a blocking threat, right? That you can't do anything until that's done.
So the question was, the injection in the head, does that block the loading of the page? Yes, it does, on purpose. Because certain apps, like changing the way the page looks, or showing a progress bar as the page loads, intrinsically need to happen before the page starts to load. So it happens as early as is possible in the loading of the page, but it does not have, but if the app needs to do something that blocks the page, then it blocks the page. If the app doesn't need to do something that blocks the page, then it doesn't. So it kind of comes down to what fundamental functionality is this app installing, because you're almost always going to be installing an external JavaScript resource onto a website. Unless you're doing some crazy inlining where you're taking all of your JavaScript and you're putting it into the HTML, which I don't know many people who do, all the JavaScript you're getting is always going to be coming from an external resource. But this is something that we can cache super, super aggressively.
Yeah, my only feedback to you is just that, like, you know, if this is like tooling for developers, is to kind of like provide guidance around that, but also to just remind them of like bundle size and how big these apps are getting on that class.
Yeah, and obviously it's kind of, and the question was, how do we, or it was really more a suggestion of remind developers how big bundles are. And the answer is, it really depends on the app, and the best thing I think is for us to make sure people installing apps know how big they are, so that apps that are smaller can beat apps that are bigger. Because I would rather have an open marketplace where users can make informed decisions about, ideally, you know, at some point we'll be able to tell them this is how much this app would slow down your site. And people can make really informed decisions about whether they want to install it or not, and whether they want to go with a competitor that's faster. Yeah, that's another question.
So you've provided a great deal of enabling here, which is great for the 99% of people that aren't web developers, and you're enabling them to do things that they would need developers' assistants to achieve. But what about the assistance of a designer to make sure that the visual effects at the end is cohesive and it's actually navigable and usable to their audience? Are you providing guidance for that as well?
So the question was, you are enabling people to do a lot of stuff with their website, and I'm going to super paraphrase here, but people make really bad decisions with their website. And how are you preventing people's websites from becoming MySpace? And the answer is, my opinion is our job is to give people tools, and it's their job to use the live preview to decide how they want their website to look. I think that the tools that are the best designed and the ones that are the most compatible are ones that are going to become more dominant. And I can't, you know, if someone wants to make their website look really bad and they look at the preview and it matches exactly what they want and that's what they click install on, more power to you. I love GeoCities. Like, you know, absolutely.
You're making their website
Yeah.
look bad, but there is opportunity to provide guidance and provide enhancement along with just the capability, but also provide something of the kind of user experience angle as well.
Yeah, the comment was, there's opportunity to help people make things more normalized. And I think that's really true. I think there's a big opportunity that happens outside of Cloudflare too, where people can build better open source tools for embedding things in websites and styling things in websites, and then many, many apps can start using those and build their own vocabulary around how things should work and how things should get inserted into websites. And I think that's something the JavaScript community hopefully will do when they start to get this capability. Yeah?
Have you guys scoped out what the store will be like? Is there going to be a review process? How much will it cost to get on the store?
Well, I can certainly tell you it will cost $0 to get on the store. At least as far as I know. Yeah, that's not something actually we've talked about at all. The review process is we moderate apps. So we look at the code of the app, and we look at the name, and we look at the description, and we make sure that it doesn't do anything security crazy, performance crazy, essentially. And so we do moderate all apps. Other than that, it's very open. So we want people to build a lot of different apps. We want apps that solve the same problem different ways. We want the app installers to choose what the best solution is. Does that answer the question? Does anyone else have any other questions? Any features they would love to be added to this app very quickly?
Will I be able to get my cat pictures via the App Store?
You will be able to replace every image on your website with cats via the App Store, and that is a promise.
Can you show the demo?
Which demo?
Cats.
Oh, I can try.
There's a cat demo?
I was not prepared. It's probably not gonna work. Yeah, it's not gonna work. I cannot show the demo. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah.
Back to the store, are there going to be private apps available, some way to give apps to your clients without making them public?
That's a super good question. The question was, is there going to be private apps available, a way to make your own app registry? And the answer is, I would very much like to build that. It's not something we've built yet. It's not something we're going to have at launch, which is in June, by the way. But I think it's a really good idea to make it so that people can build their own registry of apps and make it available to their clients who maybe they don't want to deal with every IT thing, but they want to maintain a certain amount of control over what they do. And so I would love to do that.
To extend that idea, what if enterprises who, or governments want to be able to do that and leverage it internally, only for internal?
Yeah, and the question was, what if governments want to be able to do that, or large enterprises? And I think that's fantastic too, because you're giving people a way of manipulating and improving websites that is controlled, that you can control from a security perspective. You can, the current way of installing, a tag manager. A tag manager is a tool that enterprises and other companies make available to their marketing department so that marketing can add tracking codes to websites without having to involve a developer. That's very open-ended. People can add all sorts of stuff, and it can be stuff that has not been vetted by IT or something like that. When you provide a store, you can decide exactly what people are going to be able to get access to, and so you can give people freedom, but you also can have the ability to confirm all changes before they get applied, or to control what list of apps is available. I think that's really cool, and I would love to build that. Yeah. Thank you for asking so many questions.
Questions about the store.
No, it's great.
At launch, will you guys support subscriptions, or is it going to be just purchase?
At launch, we're going to support month-to-month subscriptions. So you will buy an app for $1 a month, $10 a month, $40 a month, and it will get billed through your Cloudflare bill with a 70-30 normal app store split.
So how does dependency injection get handled here? Like if I wanted to use React or Bootstrap or whatever else, I mean, what's available globally? What's available within scope? What's bring your own?
So the question was, how does dependency injection work? The answer is there is a way to do browserify inside apps where you can define dependencies like I need jQuery from this version to this version. We're going to do that with Webpack as well at some point, I believe, in the near future, so that you can say, I need this dependency, and the App Store itself can decide how to resolve that dependency between all the apps and only include one copy of each one and do all of the building steps for you.
So
that will happen.
So it's global and it's managed. You just need to declare it.
Yeah, the way it will work is you'll declare in your install.json, which is this file that we've been looking at, what dependencies you have and what versions they need to be at, just like a package.json. And we'll resolve those dependencies between all the apps and figure out what the common set of dependencies is, and then bundle them into just the apps that need them in their scope. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. Thank you for being so patient. I know I talked for slightly longer than intended, but there was a lot of really, really good questions. And if you have any more questions, we are here. Thank you, everyone.
One last question.
Yeah, of course.
If you so felt like it, did you start with a completely blank page and build an entire site this way?
You could. I would love to see it. Yeah. There's a lot of really crazy things you could do. You could start with a grid of a site and then be able to just place things at random locations or intentional locations. Or you could start with a basic site like this typical.design site that we're using here and then augment it systematically. There's a lot of really interesting possibilities that just haven't been explored yet, and I cannot wait to see.
All right, hopefully the last question.
No, it's great.
How does this compete with web components? Because I mean, this feels like it's the same concept, right? It's essentially we're creating a set of reusable components that we can drop in and have this encapsulated scope. I guess question about scope and CSS as well, but we can talk offline.
Yeah, so the question is, how does this compete with web components? The answer is we would love for you to use web components to build apps, because web components allow you to do a lot of things at the browser level that are hard to do otherwise. The best way to build a really complicated app right now in a lot of situations is to use an iframe, because it gives you a truly isolated scope, and we would also love to build tooling around that to make it easier to build iframes and communicate between iframes and resize iframes as an open source project, kind of secondary to apps. But web components are going to provide a better way of doing that, and it would be great to build your app as a web component if the browser support aligns with what you're looking for.
I think you guys should convert to web components. I think like you guys take care of all the shadow DOM and provide the encapsulation, which would,
Yeah,
would
I mean,
eliminate the need for an iframe.
exactly. And so we don't enforce the use of an iframe right now, so you can build it any way you want and interface any way you want, and you can build your app with web components right now, and we would love that. It just depends on what browser support you need and what you're comfortable with building it with. So I think we're going to have a workshop, which means you're going to have the opportunity to try building an app. I have a list of app suggestions that I wrote momentarily ago, if anyone needs one. And we're going to be here to help and talk through questions and answer any other questions that you have. And we would love for you to stay as long as you're interested in staying. And Jay, did you have a...
Oh, I was about to ask you whether there's a common list of app ideas, but hey.
One step ahead. Yeah.
So you're open, you're totally free speech and everything, but is there going to be any curation for apps? Does the same policy flow through for apps to stop anything that might be viewed as malicious in any way?
Yes. If you want to install something that's malicious, that is definitively not listed on the App Store, you can build the app yourself, and you can install it on your own website.
No, I mean, are you curating this App Store?
Yes.
Okay.
We moderate the App Store.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of the things about allowing the other 99% to install things is they don't necessarily have the technical capability to go on GitHub and look at your source code and decide whether you're doing something. So it kind of behooves us to look at that source code and make that decision for them and make sure that there's nothing malicious. In other words, the app has to do the thing it claims to do and nothing else. Where the line is of what it's allowed to do depends on what it's trying. Again, depends on that question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, please build an app, hang out, talk, chat. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here at the inaugural Cloudflare Austin meetup. Come back to the next one, whatever it may be.
Are you starting on your app yet? Get started.
Get started with your apps. You want one of these mugs. These mugs today. I know, but if you want me to give you one, it says App Creator Achievement Unlocked. You got to build an app. It doesn't have to be good, but it will be because you've been trained.
This is just the JavaScript one. Oh, actually, I'll put it in here.
This is your.
I have to build an app.
It says Achievement Unlocked App Creator.
Oh,
Want to be a liar?
But what if you didn't bring a
Build an
laptop?
app really quickly.
I don't have a computer with me.
Very well.
She told
If
me
you
stuck into
promise
this
to
thing,
build-
didn't even know what Cloudflare was. She just accidentally got off on this floor.
Will you promise to build an app at some point in the
Going to
future?
something else, yes.
Yeah, so you can have an app. We trust you.
I don't know, I don't feel right now. It feels wrong.
Until you build an app, it's gonna be like a telltale heart. It's gonna be in your cabinet. It's gonna be shaking. You're gonna feel it. You're gonna hear it, and then one day you're gonna build an app, and you're gonna be at peace.
No, I think this is cool.
Please take one. No, it really would be great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Yeah. Yeah. Well, questions like that in my honest life, you know?
That's code for.
No, no.
It doesn't do it. I can't keep track of a lot, so I'm just go with the truth every time.
No, you go with the same lie every time.
I keep track of my lies. I've been married before. You get caught.
I mean, it's like at the end of the day, it's only gonna work if you can build apps for really good experience.
Are you building a renewal app?
Oh, no, it's already gone out. I just love that it took me right there.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
The written right
so
about
for
it.
example, one week you open powered by WPN.
Yeah.
That's so you hear something that I say, it means that don't build an app. Great. Learn that now.
Relative
Don't
position
get further down this path. It's frustrating. It's like yelling at the internet.
Yeah.
If I want something to always be in the lower right hand corner of the screen, like that piece of real estate, regardless, can I specify that?
I'll do it right now.
Because I was just saying, like, if you worked for WPN or something.
Yeah.
Submission process.
The submission process is, on this page, there's a Create App button. And when you click it, you'll get this lovely form where you can fill out all of the other details about your app and give it an icon. And then when you hit this Submit It button, it will be submitted.
Hey, do we all get beta access to the the actual app store on our Cloudflare?
Not today. Maybe in 2 weeks. Or, oh yeah, maybe in 2 weeks.
And you want to send the $20 to me. You just come by with the $20 for your app submission as well, and I will help grease the wheels to get you to the top
We
of
can
the
collect.
queue
Did you give
for the
Jade your
review
email?
process.
Jade, have you been collecting emails?
I have not collected
You don't have to show me how to do it. I just
If you collect emails from people, then we can give them early access to the App Store in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Okay, I want to show it to you.
yeah, I believe you.
Live coding.
I think
No,
actually.
I just think it's more
Did I tell you that Garrett was building the Powered by Cloudflare, the Projected by Cloudflare button?
Write down your email address.
Did you know that?
Yeah,
This
this
notebook
is super cool. Okay,
with whatever you have.
so I'm gonna make a CSS file
Access
here.
Actually, you know what? I got a
Yeah,
better
in
idea.
that CSS file.
If you are RSVP'd to the meetup, so if you were like somebody's +1 or something, then you should go and like actually RSVP now. That way you will be, then your email address will be associated.
I don't think it'll be as you can only RSVP after the event has already started.
Oh.
You can still add a commas. You can still commas like in the commas.
Okay, go to Meetup and send me a private message in meetup.com with your email address to be added.
I've seen it before.
Sound good?
Your email
I go
with
to-
your Cloudflare.
I mean, some people got
Oh,
content.
yes, it should
Right,
be.
that is kind of fun, right?
it should
Yeah,
be
if
the
you
email
must have seen it.
associated with your
If you know.
Cloudflare account.
Yes, yes. I'm not saying I don't have.
That way,
Okay,
when you
okay,
log
okay,
in,
there's a
you'll
mic.
have access to the App Store.
I forgot what I was saying. I think it's fine. But like, okay, so all I've done here is make it so that instead of just having a JavaScript file, we also have a CSS file. Okay, so the JavaScript is just making an element, giving it a certain class name, giving it the content of corner, and putting it in the page. And so now we go into our CSS, and we make it some styles. Corner. And all we're gonna say is position fixed, bottom 0, right 0, which is where you want it. You want it 0 from the bottom and 0 from the right.
So you
I'm gonna
can give people a picker easily by defining.
You don't need a picker because it's always in the bottom right. It doesn't
But
need
if I wanted them to be able to choose bottom right, bottom left, top left.
then we would do that.
Then you
in
would do
step,
that.
We'll do that in step 2.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's-
So now we see if this worked.
Oh, yeah, there's my corner thing.
So now if you want a picker, then we're gonna add some more CSS that we'll do. How do we want to do this? I'll just make it easy for the moment. And we'll say top right for our 2 calls for the moment. And then we're going to make a new option over here called corner.
What do you
It's going
mean,
to be a
Zach?
string. We're making a thing that shows a thing in the corner of the screen, like a little bug in the corner of the screen.
Oh.
And so right now we're making it so you can pick which corner it shows up in. Live coding.
Oh, so this is where you can be like, fork this on GitHub, but you could be like, fork this on GitLab.
Yeah, so you can put your little badge or whatever on the
Yeah.
absolute position on the page rather than tied to a particular
You
element.
really should make it easy to fork existing apps into your own app. I'm going to make it so you can download existing apps soon. So you can download like a zip of an existing app and then
Would that be if I want to share my source code?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, like, why not just a link to their repo?
because we used to make all apps Git repos, but in the Cloudflare world we decided some people won't want their source code to be so easily accessible, so you upload it now. But it allowed us to build the whole app creator thing, which is way cooler than the way you had to make an app before. So it all works out. But that's why. And it's actually a pain for people because you would have to make a Git repo and then make a tag for every change to your app, and then you'd upload that tag, and that would be what you would preview. So this is much better. Okay, so now we're gonna see. We should have an option here. I think is top right, bottom right, and I'm gonna give it the default value of bottom right. And then we just have to make a little JavaScript that makes this actually work, where we say,
But that looks like the bottom
Right, it's not working yet. I will in 1 second. EL dot set attribute data corner options dot corner. And then we do the same thing we did before, right?
Hey Zach, what's your Twitter name?
At Zack Bloom, BLOOM. Thank you for following me. That's exciting. Okay. And we coconut. I mean, that's very possible. Waiting for something. Oh, you know what? Typical design.
But I can show
Doesn't
you
actually ever finish
on
the website is looking.
So like, right click anywhere, and then you install bar, and then install.json, decide there's no webs. You want to be toggleable.
And I know you asked me not to actually just do it.
Oh, that's fine. I know you're excited, and I'm.
Okay, that's kind of ugly for the moment, but it will work. Whatever this
This is the
Wi-Fi
first
clock
question
is.
I ever wrote. And I haven't touched it yet, but
There's probably something wrong with me. Yes, I forgot. Okay. Always works. All we have to do now is call render once. This works.
Nice.
And then this is gonna render like in the top because it doesn't know about this nav.
Right.
So things,
Yeah, it's not perfect.
yeah, you can make it. One thing we can do actually that will be really easy is just make it appear on top of that nav. So we can make it go app CSS z index really big number.
Oh, right. It controls the.
It'll control like where it appears relative. Okay. So do you want this as like a zip or something?
Sure.
Or do you-
That'd be awesome.
Uh,
C# fat.
it's capital factory guess, right? Yeah. Oh, maybe the codes are like one-time use and not use.
Yeah, I think they're one-time use.
Yeah, no,
I've never seen a place do that before. I mean, it makes sense from a security perspective, but it's kind of.
You think they do these like once a day? Let them expire once a day.
I agree. You got a notification. Wonder who it is.
It's true. Yeah. This time my search and rescue came up and pinging me off. Chat. Feel like we need volunteers for a search on Victoria.
You have a search and rescue team?
Yeah, I'm on a search and rescue. That's super cool.
What do you do for them?
Ground search and rescue, water search and rescue, and their team. At least for another year.
Before your certification started?
I really just did it to get it off my bucket list. And it's off my bucket list. I don't need to like maintain it for the rest of my life.
How much training did it take?
So I was in sabbatical. So I took a month and went up into the mountains and did a regular CMT course. So it's like 32 days or something. It was awesome. It was like 8 hours a day plus some light exercises.
But it was in the wilderness actually learning how to.
How to do EMT stuff and make good decisions.
So I was dealing with all of the Jira that I did not deal with.
I will build an app at some point. Build it? Oh, I'm good. Right now, I'm helping. I'm encouraging all the General Assembly and other folks to think on it. All right, I'm getting to work. Are we done? You built one? What's it do?
unplug my laptop to deal with Jira. It's not Jira. GitChat.
How's the lighting?
Yeah, they make a free that, so it's good.
I'm trying to make my website.
Is there anyone who has a problem with the photos being published anywhere online in a blog? Only that embarrassing.
Yeah, it's unflattering.
Where's that gonna be published? Where are they gonna be published?
Oh, I might have some crowd shots in a blog post saying like, hey, like, we recently had 3 Cloudflare events in Austin.
I mean, where can I check it? Where can I check it?
Oh, I just checked this Cloudflare blog. If you follow Cloudflare on Twitter, blog posts will automatically.
Oh, you know, it's all live right now.
What?
It's all live right now.
It's all live?
It's all live, yeah, on YouTube.
Oh, that's right.
It was streamed.
Oh, it is?
This was streamed.
This was
On
streamed?
that camera.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it's recorded.
Wait,
It's also live streamed.
Wait, how,
Wait, is that, I would have publicized it if there was a live stream.
I was informed when I got
It's
here.
like there's a camera right
So,
there.
alright, cool.
I'm on
So that's the
TV.
thing.
No, but it's taping the other side, so it's only taping your voice.
Oh, good. My random comments from now on.
Have you ever written TV before?
what if default, like, we all signed NDAs?
Prison
Like,
photos.
somehow I already knew the answer to that. Prison photos. Is that public information? You're like headshots when you go to jail? Is it public?
There's a magazine by the gas stations that has all the shots for people in like Austin. For the last couple weeks. I picked up a few topics with friends that are arrested.
So what's the app that you're writing? Or do you have any idea?
I thought I might inject the image of the WP engine, but right now I'm just trying to see if we can get some console lookup. Part two.
The developer genes, right?
Yeah.
Do you
I love that. I love that you probably spent like a whole afternoon.
No, I spent like school and stuff. But I also I didn't know JavaScript, that's the problem.
Also a little wider, so
Oh, maybe Java, like, but I have no idea about like web stuff.
What is the dog?
No, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I feel like I need it.
No, I'd like to see the console out.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of buying it.
Yeah. Yeah, you really decked it out.
Although I do have
Oh, really? Oh, that's right.
But like, I love my MacBook.
Yeah, I kind of wish I had it. I was really against it when I first got one. I don't know. I don't really like it. I just got one. It's funny though, our company, every program we use is, like I've never heard of What happens when you get out? I love the company, but it's, yeah. Or one of the app ideas.
I don't mind.
Oh, the other app? They have like, analytics
do you have like inspires like Ghostry or
Is it actually still live? Wait, come here.
It's like non-refreshing a lot of it.
Well, the screen on here is from like a little while ago.
Well, but you see, I think it's like frozen because the internet connection isn't good.
Huh.
No, it's seen it through the